Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, or welcome if you are new to my channel. Thank you for being here. Um, so, the movie we're going to take a look at today from 1980 is one that I've had in my collection for a while, and I've been looking forward to watching because I've heard a lot of interesting things about it, shall we say. And that movie's from my Scream Factory collection, my Blu ray Scream Factory collection, which is Humanoids from the Deep, a Roger Corman collection classic. So yeah, Humanoids from the Deep I've had in my collection for a while, but hadn't watched it up until now. This review for the 1980 part of my overall 1980s horror series. You can see it does have a few special features there. You guys can pause and see. It's not an overly abundant amount of special features, but it does have a few. I watched a bit of the documentary about the making of it, which was interesting. I kind of knew that there was a female director for this movie that then they went back and added some stuff that wasn't part of the movie she made. And she wasn't too happy about it. So I kind of knew the story about that. Um, but it was interesting to hear it through the documentary. That's the backstory or the making of the movie, I should say. That's part of this Screen Factory Blu-ray here. So anyway, let's just go ahead and get into my review here for Humanoids from the Deep from 1980. So Humanoids from the Deep, also released as Monster in Europe and Japan. And actually, that's the title that comes up. And then in parentheses, in small letters underneath, it says Humanoids from the Deep, which was kind of interesting. But it's a 1980 American science fiction horror film. Roger Corman serves as the film's uncredited executive producer, and his company, New World Pictures, distributed it. Humanoids from the Deep was directed by Barbara Peters, and an uncredited Jimmy T. Murakami, Murakami. Jimmy Murakami was the uncredited second director, second unit director, if you will, that came in and added certain scenes in the movie that we'll get into. So yeah, basically the movie opens with anglers from the fishing village of Noyo, California, watching what appears to be a monster or catch what appears to be a monster. The young son of one of the anglers falls into the water, and something unseen drags him under the surface. Another angler prepares a flare gun, but he slips and accidentally fires it into the deck, which is soaked with gasoline dropped earlier by the boy. The vessel bursts into flames and explodes. Everybody aboard is killed. Jim Hill and his wife Carol witness the explosion. Later, Jim and Carol's dog goes missing, and the pair finds its dismembered corpse on the nearby beach. The following day, teenagers Jerry Potter and Peggy Larson go for a swim at the beach. Jerry is abruptly pulled under the water. Peggy believes it to be a prank until she discovers his mutilated corpse. Peggy screams and tries to reach the beach, but a monstrous figure drags her across the sand. The humanoid creature tears off her bikini and rapes her. So yeah, that's how the movie starts. That's the setup and the premise and the start of Humanoids from the Deep from 1980. As far as the cast goes, we have Doug McClure as Jim Hill, Ann Turkel as Dr. Susan Drake, Vic Morrow as Hank Slattery, Cindy Weintraub as Carol Hill, Anthony Pena as Johnny Eagle, and Lynn Schiller as Peggy Larson. So yeah, that's to set up the premise and the cast for the 1980 sci-fi horror movie Humanoids from the Deep. I really had a good time with this movie. I really did enjoy it. Yeah, it's just it's fun. It's entertaining. It's only 80 minutes. So it gets out, it gets in, does what it needs to do, and gets out. Yeah, let's just go ahead and get into my pros or the things that I really liked about Humanoids from the Deep. So just that formula that I was sort of describing, or the formula that this movie has, taking an over the top sort of 50s sci-fi creature feature and combining it with the sleaze and aesthetic of a Roger Corman 70s or 80s B movie. It works on so many different levels for me, and it makes for a hell of a fun and entertaining movie, frankly. Um, I really like the look and the creature design of the humanoids, the level of detail, and just the overall look. It's kind of like an updated creature from the Black Lagoon creature, which of course this movie sort of, it's not a sequel or a remake to that, but you could almost argue that it is a remake to the 1950s movie Creature from the Black Lagoon, except you got more creatures in this movie. But it really works. The look of the creature works. The practical effects, the costume works. It just kind of everything about the creature works in this movie on a fun and entertaining level. I really love the setting of the Northwest seaside small town with the sort of blue collar townspeople that make up the this town. It makes for an interesting dynamic combined with the humanoid sea creatures and just sort of the dynamic at play there, where you have these sort of no nonsense blue collar fishermen and seaside town peoples. Um, and they're not, I wouldn't necessarily say that there's a lot of them that are tough, that are, they sort of have those blue collar roots that you would expect. And so that's kind of fun to see play out in this, in the backdrop of this creature feature. Um, the movie does have a good amount of kills with a lot of blood and gore, including decapitations, um, characters' inner bodies being exposed, and some really gnarly practical gore and makeup effects that just add to the fun and enjoyment of the movie. Um, like I mentioned earlier in the beginning of this film, where the two teenagers go swimming and Jerry's pulled under the water and Peggy believes it to be a prank, and when she discovers his mutilated corpse, like half his face is just exposed, like the inside of his head is exposed, and it's really gnarly. Great practical effects from the early '80s, which I'm obviously a big fan of. So I really enjoyed that. The movie does have some great underwater and POV slasher like shots as well that very much fit into the time of this time of horror movies, that sort of POV of the killer slasher element. But also I thought the underwater shots were very well done, which we get right off the bat. So that was really good. Of course, the movie does have plenty of TNA, but I think it also does a good job of not making the rape scenes too disturbing. And it does that by not lingering on them for too long or really showing them. They're more implied. Like you see the creature get on top of the women and then it cuts away to something else. So it's not like it's overly, uh, it's not disturbing because it's not overly shown. It's not overly, uh, well, why can't I think of the word that I'm trying to think of? um, it's more kind of implied, and it's more another reason why it's not why I think they do it tastefully is it's kind of a silly premise to begin with. These creatures, which are clearly costume creatures, getting on top of women and raping them. It's not like Last House on the Left or um, even what's the one I just watched, House at the Edge of the Park or I Spit on Your Grave. Those are disturbing rape scenes that they focus on for too long. That was the word I was looking for. They don't really focus on the rape that much here, and the fact that it's kind of a ridiculous premise with these creatures make it so it's not quite as I don't think it's quite as exploitative, even though it still is. But because of the silliness that's involved and the fact that the shots aren't lingered on the rape scenes, I think that makes it a little bit more tolerable to watch. Even though, again, the female director, the first director, Barbara Peters, wasn't too happy with those were the scenes they put in that she didn't have anything to do with. She basically directed the movie with all the kill scenes and stuff, the guys getting their heads ripped off and whatnot, which is all very good. But she didn't do any of the gratuitous nudity or gratuitous rape or sex scenes. Roger Corman, it was his direction to put that in, and then that's where Jimmy Murakami or Murakami, I can't say that name very well, came in as second unit director. So again, I can understand why she wasn't happy about it because it is a different movie than what she shot, and even some of the actresses in the movie said that they were upset too because it's not the movie that they wanted or that they thought they were making. But at the same time, I understand why they put that stuff in because it would have been a completely different movie um, had it been what they directed. And quite frankly, I don't think it would have been as entertaining or as fast paced a one either. Just my 2 cents. But like I said, I think the main line that I'm trying to come back to is there's a silliness to it. There's an over the topness, 50 sci-fi cheesiness to it that doesn't make it disturbing rape, even though rape is never good or in any context, obviously. But I think in this movie, it's not disturbing. That's the best way to say it. As disturbing as I spit on your grave or something like that. Moving on, I found the creatures of this, or the, I'm sorry, I found the characters of the seaside town, well, not all being likable, especially Vic Morrow's character, to be sort of grounded in some kind of reality. The characters, not the movie, where you really believe them. You believe that these people are that they've been part of this seaside town for a while and they kind of know how to handle certain things when it comes to fishing and angling and things like that. Some of them I found to be interesting, with more than just being bodies or you know, sort of throwaway characters. Well, you do have some of those certainly in this movie. Some of the main characters here, like Doug McClure's character, Ann Turkle's character, Vic Morrow's character, and even Cindy Weintraub's character, the wife of Doug McClure's character. I thought that those four in particular had a little bit more meat on the bone, if you will, than we typically get in in characters in these type of horror movies. So that was definitely a pro. Incredibly well paced movie. As I mentioned, it's only 80 minutes long. There's no slow parts, there's no having to wait for the action, no filler. It gets right to the action within the first few minutes, right to the end. I mean, I talked about it in the opening of this movie where you have a young kid who's probably like 10, 11 years old that gets dragged into the water and you see the big you see all the bubble up sort of in the water. So that this movie really goes for it, and also you have dogs that are dogs that are disemboweled here, and they find on the beach after the fact, and so yeah, there's no this they really go for it. They really go big with this movie. They're not afraid to go there with children and animals, basically, and like I said, it's action packed galore from start to finish. So those are my pros. Obviously, quite a few for Humanoids from the Deep from 1980. As far as cons go, there is some choppy editing and directing, no doubt, in part because of the fact the movie uses two different directors, and the second director has, they shoot different. They shoot new scenes that weren't there as part of the movie, and then they try to splice them in with the existing movie as it was, some of the sleazier scenes into the already existing movie. So it makes for some rough transitions that are kind of noticeable, some rougher editing as well. So I think that was just kind of unavoidable with what they wanted the movie to be. There is kind of a side story that doesn't really go anywhere and wasn't really all that necessary, having to do with Vic Morrow's character of Hank Slattery, who's basically a racist and is after this Native American character of Johnny Eagle, basically because he's a Native American. It's kind of trying to expose them a little bit and what they're up to. Hank and Johnny are the characters respectively. That I didn't feel that was necessary. That just didn't really go anywhere from a through line standpoint. So that's a con. And then there are some of the blood shown, like from the characters as they're being killed, does look kind of fake. It has that melted crayon like look that you get in a lot of giallo films from the late 70s and early 80s. And then I thought some of the acting also wasn't all that great. Like I said, I think the top four or five main characters do well, but some of the side characters, teenagers and other members of this community, you can tell the acting's kind of subpar there. But I really did like Doug McClure. Obviously, Vic Morrow was a great actor. Very tragic what happened to him. Of course, Vic Morrow, probably most known for a lot of people from the Twilight Zone movie from 1983, where he died in 1982 when they were making it. In that segment, oh, why can't I think of his name? The director, the infamous, I should say, director. Oh man, his name escapes me now. He did an American Werewolf in London. John Landis. That's what I'm trying to think of. It's just so senseless. It should have never senseless. It should have never happened. But Vic Morrow's great in this movie, even though his character's not great. But yeah, but some of the other acting's not great. So anyway, I'm kind of going on a tangent there. But Humanoids from the Deep, I got a lot more good than bad to say about this movie. You kind of have to go into it as knowing that it's a schlocky movie that, like I said, combines the 50s sci-fi creature feature with the Roger Corman sleaze and aesthetic of the 70s and 80s. And if you do that, you're going to have a really good time with it. Obviously, the story and how these creatures come to be is pretty over the top and ridiculous. Where basically they're experimenting and these salmon become mutated, and then these other creatures in the sea eat the salmon and become more mutated to basically become these humanoids from the deep, as the movie would suggest. Interestingly enough, the original movie that Barbara Peters shot, it was actually going to be called what was it? Beneath the Darkness, I think it was called. And then they changed it to Humanoids from the Deep once the second unit director came through and stuff. So there's a bit of a backstory with this movie, but I just had such a good time with it. It's so entertaining. And I'm going to give Humanoids from the Deep an 8.5 out of 10. I really like this movie from 1980. I knew I would from what I heard about it before, but when you're sitting on a movie for a while and before you watch it, sometimes they can let you down. But not the case with this movie. 8.5 out of 10 for Humanoids from the Deep. Go ahead and comment down below what you guys think of this movie. Do you like it? Do you not? Why not? Please like this video, hit the little notification bell, and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my upcoming reviews for this series. Just an FYI, I mentioned this at the beginning of this last month for 1980 of this series, but um, there's not going to be a review that drops for about the next week now, like around the 22nd of July. My next review for this series will be dropping because I'm going to be out of town on vacation. So I won't have access to watch or shoot any of these reviews. So, but with that being said, you also don't want to miss any of my other great horror content starting in August and throughout the rest of the year. Um, but yeah, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you're enjoying this review series. And as always, I do recommend this movie, by the way, as long as you have the right mindset going into it. But with that being said, as always, stay scared. Bye.